For Hindus in Trinidad, the first cremation happened in a garbage dump, and the stink from the rotting and burning city garbage was awful. Can you imagine cremating your loved one in the pits of a garbage dump? Well, I'm going to share that story with you. Today, we take for granted the right of cremation throughout the Western world, but for my ancestors, those hard-fought battles to preserve the Hindu tradition helped to cement the Hindu identity in the Caribbean. That's the power of death rituals. Regardless of our religion or culture, there are always questions that come up when we're faced with death. I knew most of the basics of a Hindu death, but when my dad passed away just over a year ago, everything felt more real. And of course, I had all the questions that many of you may have. Why do we cremate? Why do male relatives shave their head? What exactly is a Pinda? And why do we offer it? Death is a fascinating topic because so much of it is unknown, and the way we look at death is shaped by how we view the world. So I want you to join me in this conversation about death. We'll first talk about the struggles of Hindus in Trinidad to gain the legal right to cremate the dead, and then we'll look at the Hindu worldview to understand the reasons behind some of the Hindu death rituals that we perform. Finally, I'll share some of my own thoughts navigating the death of my father. It hasn't been easy, but in death, transformation happens, which if used properly leads to positive change. So let's get to it. During Indian indentureship in the Caribbean, Hindus were not allowed to cremate the dead. Until today, you'll still find numerous burial grounds for Hindus throughout the Caribbean. The effort to legalize cremation was important in establishing a strong and assertive Hindu presence in later colonial periods, but the fight wasn't easy. What you may not have known is that the government of India organized a British member of the Indian Civil Service, Mr. J.D. Tyson, to visit the West Indies in order to document and assess the grievances of the Indians. In his report written in 1939 titled Report on Conditions of Indians in Jamaica, British Guyana and Trinidad, Tyson states, "Though Indians have not hitherto practiced cremation in Trinidad, there is a definite and apparently growing demand that this traditional and universal method of disposing of the dead in Hindu India should be permitted in Trinidad. It would seem reasonable that cremation by the pyre system should be allowed in an island where over 20% of the population are Hindus." Special permission was granted for the first cremation in 1940 at the Port of Spain garbage dump known as La Basse, now located along the Beetham Highway. But according to the Mahasabha Bulletin of October 1940, the stink from the rotting garbage and the burning city garbage was awful. It wasn't until the Cremation Act of 1953 passed on Friday, May the 8th, that the concerns of Hindus were addressed. Today in Trinidad, cremation remains one of the most recognizable rituals of the Hindu population. So where did the help come from? Two places, Guyana and India. Pandit Dinanath Tiwari, a Hindu leader from British Guyana, brought Dr. Parashuram Sharma from the Sanatan Dharma Pratinidhi Sabha located in Lahore, India, which is now present-day Pakistan. He helped to advocate for Hindu rights in Trinidad, including cremation, recognition of Hindu marriages, state aid for Hindu schools, a Hindu college, and a unified Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha. This is a history that no one pays attention to anymore. To understand why Hindus fought to preserve all the Hindu rituals associated with death, we first need to understand how Hinduism or Sanatan Dharma defines us, the human being. This can get highly technical, but I will do my best to keep it as simple as possible. When you look at me right now on your phone or on your TV or wherever you're watching this, you're seeing my face, my arms, my eyes, all my attributes that are physical. This constitutes the gross body, or what is known as the Stula Sharira. The gross body is composed of the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. In order for me to speak, think, talk, or reason, or even identify as Sean Pinda from Hindu lifestyle, this requires something more. This is called the subtle body, or the Sukshma Sharira, and it encompasses our mind, our intellect, and our ego. The third body is the causal body, also known as the karana sharira, which gives rise to the gross and subtle body. When I was trying to wrap my head around all these concepts, a simple example helped me. Let's say you want to construct a building. What's the first thing you need? Well, first you need a thought or an imagination of how the building will look, its basic structure. Second, you need some type of sketch or draft of the building. It's only when you have those two things that you can finally construct the actual physical building. Taking this example, we can see how it applies to humans. We have the causal body, which is like that thought that gives rise to the subtle body, which in turn gives rise to the gross body. This is explained in the following Sanskrit shloka found in the Tattva Bodha written by Adi Shankara.
Sthula shariram kim panchikrita panchamahabhutaihi kritam satkarma janyam sukha dukkhade bhoga ayatanam shariram.
Now you may be wondering, so where is your soul in all of this discussion? The problem when we are trying to describe the Hindu worldview is that English words don't give the depth of explanation that is required. And it's for this reason I generally don't like using the word soul, because of all the baggage and extra meaning that is attached to this word. The word used in Hindu philosophy is Atman, which does not have an equivalent English translation, but can be best described as a principle of awareness, or an awareness of existence. The Atman itself is encased in what is known as the 5 koshas or sheaths, and the 5 sheaths are connected to the 3 shariras. I'm not going to spend too much time on the 5 koshas, but in brief, here they are. The Annamaya kosha, which is the food sheath, the Pranamaya kosha, which is the vital energy sheath, the Manomaya kosha, which is the mind sheath, the Vijnanamaya kosha, which is the intellect sheath, and the Anandamaya kosha, which is the bliss sheath. The connection between the 3 bodies and the 5 sheaths are as follows. The Stula Sharira corresponds to the Annamaya kosha. The Sukshma Sharira corresponds to the Pranamaya, Manomaya, and Vijnanamaya kosha. The Karana Sharira corresponds to the Anandamaya kosha. In essence, the 3 shariras are different aspects of the human being, while the 5 koshas are the layers that envelop the Atman. So now that we've gotten through that explanation, what exactly is death in Hinduism? What is reincarnated? Simply put, death is when the gross body dies. Your heart may stop beating, you may slowly take your last breath, and when that time comes when your gross physical body just stops, that is death. I saw this happen to my father. He was diagnosed with lung cancer, having never smoked a day in his life. After radiation treatment and several rounds of chemo, his body started to break down. My entire family was at his bedside when his heart beat for the final time. The funny thing though is that when you're in that moment, you're not thinking about what is the gross body, what is the subtle body, what is the causal body. For myself, all those questions came after, when we started to prepare for the final funeral rites. The final funeral rites in the Hindu worldview is known as the Antiyesti Samskara and is performed at the end of someone's life. The defining feature of the Antiyesti Samskara is cremation, or the burning of the physical body. Why though? The answer is actually very simple. When the gross body dies, there's an attachment that forms by the subtle body, and to break that attachment, we need to return the body to the elements. Cremation is the fastest way for this to happen. The ashes that are left after the body has finished burning are dispersed into a river, and the body itself is returned to the elements. Burials are also permitted in Hinduism, however, the attachment to the gross body lingers. And we see this in Western cultures where grieving family members visit the graves of their loved ones for years after they have passed on. Generally speaking, it is also the male relatives that perform these final ceremonies, since traditionally speaking it was the male who maintained the family name and continued the lineage. And yes, there are instances where females are allowed to perform the final rites, and this is mentioned in the Garud Puran. I've included reference in the video description. After the death of my father, I also shaved my head. But why? The main reason is that it's a sign of mourning and the first step in preparing yourself for the final rites. Hair is a sign of vanity, Many of us spend a lot of time making sure our hair is combed just right, myself included. You look in the mirror every morning, fixing and combing. By shaving our head, it's the first step to psychologically prepare yourself to perform the final rites. There are other reasons relating to cleanliness which all form part of the Hindu tradition as well, and this is explained in chapter 10 of the Garud Puran. Another marker of the Hindu funeral is the Pinda, or the rice balls that are offered during the final pujas. But why do we do this? It all relates back to how Hindus view the human being. At death, the gross body dies. For 10 days after the funeral, the subtle body and the causal body remain. To provide nourishment, we offer the pindas, and an experienced pundit or purohit will explain all the steps necessary in these pujas. One hallmark feature of the Hindu death ritual is the year-long period of mourning. For myself, this is a period where I was adjusting to a new life. Grief has its ups and downs. My dad used to call me when I was on my way to work every morning around 9 a.m., and we would chat mostly about Hindu affairs, whether it be mandir functions or the ups and downs of running a temple. When I drive to work now, those calls don't come. I think it's fitting that the period of mourning for a Hindu is a year. Many grief counselors would acknowledge that navigating grief isn't straightforward. There's ups and downs. I know in the week following the final pujas for my father, I couldn't maintain my focus and my mind would start to wander. The grief we have is the attachment to the physical form, this gross outer body. My father, with this particular face and mannerisms and smile and laugh, was no longer present. Something special happened after all the ceremonies and the rituals were done, and I started adjusting to a new life without my father. His death brought about a change in my own life. It brought more focus towards sadhana and using what little time I have to do the work that I want, to work towards something, finding my own purpose. Researching this video was a journey in discovering how my ancestors fought to maintain Hindu practices in a foreign land. My father devoted his entire life to preserving the Hindu traditions when he migrated to Canada. And now the cycle continues. If you've gained something from this video, please share it with your friends and family. And I'll catch you in the next one. Om Shanti.